Welcome back to the Dopesick Show you won't get sick of. I'm Spencer, and this is Sasha. I spent most of my 20s in federal prison, but I've been off heroin since April 9, 2010. Got a lot of stories about the stupid stuff I did to get put in prison. Also got quite a few stories about the crazy stuff that actually happened when I was in federal prison. And God forbid you end up in prison, you want to make some of the same mistakes I made. So, this is a story about prisons. A funny story, one of many I have, but prior to going to prison, I was in jail for a year and a month, and during that time, a lot of the old timers told me 3 rules. Don't do drugs, don't gamble, don't mess with punks. If you do those 3 things, you can usually make it through prison relatively, easily. So, when I say punk, I don't mean anything to hurt anybody's feelings. I actually got a book sitting on that shelf right now that on my other channel, I'm going to pin the comment, Spencer and Sasha Uncensored. I'm going to read some stuff out of the book. It's pretty funny, but punk is an actual definition that they have in that book that you had to learn for this corrections class. I took a corrections class when I was out on bond, a college class for it. Figured it'd be interesting to learn before I went to prison. So anyways, the person, I lived in a place called Whitewood, Virginia after I got in trouble everywhere in the Roanoke area. It is a country area, and there are some of these old rednecks there. I've noticed there are only 2 places to really go. The bowling alley, then there was this restaurant bar. You could still go if you were under 21. You just couldn't drink. So these possessive rednecks, I'd noticed that you couldn't even speak to their woman. You couldn't look at their woman, or else everyone would fight you. Yeah, like that, okay? Like ultra possessive. It is the same exact situation in prison. If you are caught talking to somebody's punk, if you are caught staring at somebody's punk, that could get you in a fight, basically. I've seen people get in fights over staring at somebody's punk, over talking to somebody's punk. So that's something to keep in mind with this whole thing. Now, so, in federal prison, the medium security, it's an odd place. It's the twilight zone of prisons. When a new punk shows up, usually within a week, they're shacked up with somebody, they're an item with somebody. It's usually by their choice and usually because people jump out of the woodwork. One of the most iconic moments was a 6'6" devout Muslim who denounced his religion and said, "Listen, guys, I'm going off and doing this. You got a problem? Do something about it now." No problem? Good. 6'6", 300 pounds of muscle. Looked like Rick Ross, except for his jack. Okay, beard, bald head, always had glasses on. Okay, that's the type of thing that happens when punk shows up. Somebody will denounce their religion, go as far as that, to go off and be an item with them. And typically, if somebody they don't have competition, they just end up an item with somebody else. So the 2 people in question here that we're going to be speaking of, the first one, I'm going to call him Snowball because that's his nickname, and it's funny. The second one, we're just going to call him Larry. Larry was jacked, ripped to the bone, like a burpee king, like for real. And Snowball, decent sized person, but if you were to, guess who'd win the fight, you'd guess Larry, who you'd put your money on. So, ironically, they were friends. They were friends prior to this whole thing. But things can split people up as friends. Guess this was one of them situations. The punk that showed up was about 90 pounds, probably 4'10". Looked like a kid that was 13 or 14. So that shows you something about their mindsets of who they're going after. Got to keep in mind, Petersburg was 40% chomos, so there are a lot of deviants there. And as far as I know, these 2 people I'm speaking of, had that type of background. Half the people locals, half the people chomos. It was a weird place, a very weird place. It's where I started and where I ended. Didn't get sent there. I was unfortunate enough to land at. I was supposed to go to Morgantown camp. They sent me to Petersburg Low, got in trouble, went into medium security. So, I did burpees every day with this guy King. If there's a guy Tampa Vinny in the comments who's actually there for a lot of this, he knows about King because, shoot, he was there and I saw it too. King stabbed somebody in the face one day. But I did burpees with King every day. And we do it on the blacktop. There's a 50 by 50 foot area when you first get on the brake yard at Petersburg. And then there's a fence that has an open area that leads to the main rec yard. We do burpees in that area. Or we did burpees overlooked the area they call Peter Beach. Yeah, I couldn't make this stuff up. So, what you'd see one day was Snowball walking around with the bunk. Hee-hawing, laughing. And then the next day, you'd see Larry walking around with the punk. when one of them was walking, depending on which one of them got out to the yard first, whoever got out to the yard first would be the one walking and spending their time with the punk, while the other one would be sitting there looking menacingly and looking angrily, either with their arms crossed or walking circles around the track, mean mugging them the whole entire time. It was obvious that this was basically a competition to see who was going to pull this punk. So, on top of that, they were both bringing out presents. So one day Snowball brings out presents to the punk, and then Larry brings out more presents than he brought the next day to give to the punk. So they're both like competing, trying to outdo the other one in what types of gifts they're going to give the punk. And you can sense there is an impending fight that's going to happen. There's nothing that can be done, nothing that can be said. It's going to happen. They're going to have a fight. Typically, people would have a fight in the center of the rec yard in this kind of like this. It's a bathroom, but it's like a brick enclosure that's the one wall's brick, the other wall's brick. Then on the back side, it was 4 foot high, went across. Then this side's open. So the car that sits on the hill and overlooks cannot see into there. So people would fight there because it was a place they could fight privately, and they wouldn't definitely go to the hole. If you get in a fight in the yard just out in the open, they're going to hit the button. They're going to hit the deuces, as they say. You're going to get caught for that. So typically people would fight in that enclosure. It's almost always where it would happen. But what ultimately ended up happening was they ended up having a fight just right out in the open in that 50 by 50 foot area because tensions and emotions were so high because of them competing. So what ultimately ends up happening is they get in a fight, and I'd have put my money on Larry. Like if I was to guess, if I was, betting man on this, I'd have bet on Larry. But Snowball hit a double leg takedown, basically tackled him, got him in full mount, so his legs are over top of him, and he's raining down punches. And Larry's trying to buck his hips up to knock him off. Then he tries to swing his legs up across him and then switch. It's not happening. And Snowball's raining down punches on Larry, like terrible. Like, when you see Rocky and you see the spit and blood come out, it's like that. Okay, he's raining hell down upon him. It's kind of weird because you wouldn't expect the fight to go this way, but it's how it went. Ultimately, since it's out in the open, they hit the button. People come running for all directions. Red, even he was a guy who handed out medications. Probably about 280 pounds, and he'd be running faster than any of them. He'd be passing people twice as fit as him. It was like watching Chris Farley run. That part of it was funny. But ultimately, what ends up happening is they both go to the hole. They both go to the SHU, solitary confinement, and they have to spend a month there. It takes a week before you see the kangaroo court, so probably 5 weeks. They're going to lose a month of good time. They're going to lose one privilege for a year, another for 6 months. Visits for a year possibly, commissary for 6 months. That's the type punishments for this. On top of that, you lose a month of good time. But the really ironic thing during this time was there was another fella that swooped in and got the punk while they were in the hole. And this fella could have smashed either of them. Probably could have beat both of them up at the same time. He's a big old guy with braids, and you know how like some people got fat, but you could see his traps popping off of him. He had a big old belly, but like there's some people that fat and they just look fat. This was a fat guy with jacked, looked like he was a power lifter, okay? And he's the one that swooped in and claimed the punk that was 4'10", 90 pounds, and looked like a kid. And that's how it basically ended. Now when Larry got out of the hole, he was messed up. I mean, even though it'd been a month, bruised, scuffed, he got beat up something awful. And this is the type of stuff that you would see at Petersburg. This would happen like at the whole time this type of thing was happening. I'm sitting there watching it thinking, my Lord, where am I at? And, couldn't stand being at this place at this particular time, but it's left me with a tremendous amount of stories, such as this one. Yeah, so rule number 3, don't mess with punks. That's a strong one. On my other channel, like I said, I want to get that. I've got a book, the college book, corrections book, that I want to read some of the stuff off of there on. It's pretty funny. It's actually really funny, some of the stuff that's written in this college textbook. I think that it would be very enjoyable. It's going to be funny. I'm going to pin the comment on my other channel, Spencer and Sasha Uncensored. And I really do think it'll be laughable and really surprising how they talk about it in a whole lot of different ways. But yeah, so basically they went out there, competing over this. And there was a situation actually with Snowball too, where he ended up cussing out this one guy who started trying to move in too. But that guy, was just a joke of everybody that is a joke. I mean, they weren't a whole lot ahead of it, but the guy who started moving, and you saw him cuss him out. So you knew he meant business about trying to swoop in there and claim his punk. Anyways, if you liked the video, press the like button. If not, it's 9 minutes and 46 seconds of your life in which you'll never get back. I have an abscessed tooth right now. I'm in a tremendous amount of pain. Also having issues with my microphone here. I'm probably going to have to get a new one. I will have a new one within 2 days at the very, very most. And we'll have that whole situation fixed. I apologize for the dropping out and everything else with the sound. It happened when I first got it. Then I got it situated. Now it's messing up again. I can't explain it, but I do apologize. I hate that. It absolutely drives me crazy, but I will get it figured out quickly. And that is a promise. Hopefully it's working this time. We'll find out here in about 10 seconds. This is literally the 5th time I've recorded this, which is why it's in a little bit of a rush and a little bit shorter, but I'm doing my best.